Hi, welcome to TVI Tips from Amanda. We're in part 4 of our Partnering with Paras videos. This is the final video in this series about training and supporting paraprofessionals. We've talked about creating a job description and justifying the need for a paraprofessional. We've talked about developing a plan for what training you're going to do. We've talked about a packet that you present with your paraprofessional at the beginning of your journey with training them. And now we're going to talk about, oh my goodness, it started all the way at the beginning again. Now we're going to talk about how we're going to teach that actual Braille. So I tend to start with a half-day training session with my paraprofessional before we start any significant training. And this is just the welcome day and to provide an introduction to Braille. I usually like to do this like the week before school starts. So we'll go over the paraprofessional packet, flipping through the different sections, talking about them, and we'll go in depth in the welcome section and the etiquette section. That way that information is solidified and fresh for the first day of school. We'll do an introduction to Braille. And I like to use the UEB online training manual for that, or you might use the Braille bug, depending on how things are going with the paraprofessional at that point in the time. We might use the Braille bug activity packet for this introduction to Braille, or we might use the UEB online training manual. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up before I talk about the next thing, but I showed you the packet in the previous video. The UEB online people have shared the Australian training manual, which is great, and if you scroll down, it gives you their, we just went through the index and now we're looking at the foreword. It has introductory remarks, and I think it is extremely well written, nice, concise, clear way to introduce Braille. And so it talks about the arrangement of the Braille cells, talks about a little bit about contractions, it talks about UEB. It has some references. It has definitions, which I think are important. And then it kind of talks about what is in the manual, how to complete the exercises, the layout of the exercises, how to do centering, and just some advice. And then it rolls right into the lessons. And the reason I like to use this chunk, in which I oftentimes will print out and include in the training packet, and then also in the UEB training manual that I share a physical copy of with my paraprofessionals, because I think it's just a really good introduction for what they're going to be using in the long term. So I do that introduction to Braille. Together we create a UEB online account. If you're not familiar with UEB online, it is free online Braille training curriculum. Also, it's the same as the PDF I just showed you, the BrailleAustralia.org, which is the people who created the UEB online website. So you can print out their entire curriculum in this training manual, which I provide to my paraprofessionals, and then you can take the UEB online courses here. You would register, and then you can go through the first few lessons together. I usually like to do that because I'm there to provide that immediate in-person feedback for my paraprofessional. So as part of our first half-day training, we do that together. And then I also set them up with YouTube videos on Braille. I have created a playlist on my TVI Tips from Amanda page that talks about, again, just that reiteration of what is Braille. We separate the alphabet into 2 chunks, learning the letters A through M, learning the letters N through Z. I would not move into alphabetic word signs and strong contractions until the alphabet is mastered, but I do want them to see these resources that are available online. I haven't gotten past the strong contractions because my paraprofessional that I was creating these for at the time has not moved on to those, but they'll be coming out soon. So anyway, I share these videos because I want my paraprofessional to come back and look at these and refresh their memory. I know that some people will take longer to learn the alphabet than others. I just want it to be fresh and to have some verbal feedback, because some people can't just sit there and do an online curriculum and learn it really well. There's a tendency, I feel, for people to just breeze through online information or paper information and not really retain it. So I'm trying to surround them with Braille in a lot of different ways. So in addition to the UEB online curriculum and using the YouTube videos and setting them up with the NFB coursework for the NLS certification, I use the UEB practice sentences, which are available from Actual Tactuals. They just came out with a new version, and I really love this UEB practice sentences. I use it with students, but I think it's great for using it with paraprofessionals who are also learning the code. So I don't leave this copy with them, because I also will copy sometimes this, you see the Braille, and have them transcribe the Braille to print, and then sometimes I will copy a page that has just the print and have them do it in Braille when I'm doing progress monitoring. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a subsequent slide in this presentation. But I do also share some of that for extra practice for my paraprofessionals who need another level. And then I mentioned earlier, sign up for the NFB coursework. I usually do that once the TV or the paraprofessionals start to make some progress with Braille, so that they can have some level of confidence when they're completing those assignments for the Braille certification, transcription certification. And I think that doing a combination of all these different approaches is going to be extremely helpful in getting that Braille information to really stick with the person who's learning Braille, because it's one of those use it or lose it type things. And if we are learning the Braille in isolation and not using it throughout our days, then we're not going to be able to retain that information quite as well. So I don't know what happened to, I must have clicked on a link. There we go. Whoops. Okay. So we've talked about just that first training session with the paraprofessionals, and now I want to move on towards progress monitoring. You saw in video 2 where I talked about the plan for the paraprofessional I was working with this year was to start at 4 hours a week of direct instruction. And I have learned throughout the course of my career as a TVI that I can't just assume that what I'm teaching is going to be learned by the paraprofessional, and I can't just assume that no one's going to ask questions about what we're actually doing during our in-person training sessions. So I keep an anecdotal record here. It's the same thing that I use for working with my students. It's the same case notes thing that I use when I'm working with students. I will change this to paraprofessional instead of student. I keep the school division. I keep the school, the case manager, I change to administrator and their name and email address. And then I don't fill out the parent phone number or parent information, but I will put my paraprofessional's phone number and their email address in there. And then I document the days and times that I'm providing direct instruction to the paraprofessional. I might not use the goal and objectives section because I'm not doing the same type of thing, but I do keep a consultation log for what I'm consulting on, and if any equipment is loaned out. And then in this notes section, I add in a new line and say progress monitoring notes, and I will keep any data here to write the date that I provided progress monitoring and what they were able to show me that they had learned and could generalize. So let's go back to the chart here. My PowerPoint. So I keep that anecdotal record so that if anyone asks later what we were doing during our time, I can pull up and show them exactly what we were working on. And then if a situation arises where the training's not going well and my paraprofessional's not able to learn the Braille like we were expecting, or something's come up, then we have documentation of providing appropriate instruction and then showing that things weren't going well, and we can document what we've done to try to improve the knowledge and retention of Braille. So when we're progress monitoring, we're looking at assessing the Braille and the retention of the lessons. Are they able to, say, complete lessons 1 through 5 and then show mastery of those from UEB Online when we're using them with our student? I might use the UEB practice sentences that I just showed you to monitor progress, and then Teaching Visually Impaired has a great progress chart, which we're going to open here. And it goes through the exact order that she teaches goes through in the UEB practice sentences book. You can show just a check mark. I do change the student's name to Para's name, the date of the assessment, and then my name. And then I just check what they showed. Were they able to visually read these things in the document that I assessed on? Did they maybe write them on the Perkins Brailler? Could they explain why we did or didn't use something, the rules that go along with it? And let's go back to the PowerPoint. I progress monitor depending on how well it's going. I at least do quarterly or whatever the grading period is for students. And then for paraprofessionals who need extra support, I might even do monthly progress monitoring. And so I will also use the students' work samples for the paraprofessional to go through and transcribe that. I think that being able to transcribe from Braille to print something that a student has made is going to show a lot better example of what the paraprofessional can do, because the students are going to have errors, and it's going to be really important that the paraprofessional transcribe only exactly what's written in Braille. And then I keep a portfolio of paraprofessional work samples so that I can show progress over time in case something arises and they either want to move a paraprofessional or the paraprofessional is not learning exactly what I want them to do. So we've talked a little bit about how the Braille instruction looks. I kind of like to not provide in-person direct training once they've learned the alphabet. I want them to go at their own pace and move forward, but if they need in-person support, we can still continue to do that. As they continue to learn new skills, then the TVI needs to continue to support those new skills. Once the alphabet and literary, Braille, and UEB is learned, then you have to determine Nemeth math code and what instruction for that is going to look like, or UEB math and what instruction for that's going to look like. You might go to the APH UEB lessons to learn the math, or you might go to UEB online to learn the UEB technical math information there. You're going to encourage multiple NLS certifications, so they've gotten the literary Braille done. Now let's work through the math, and maybe the student's going to be a music student, so you're going to talk about music, and just whatever your paraprofessional needs to do to continue to learn and improve their knowledge there. Some other important things that I think that we don't always do as TVIs is to ask for feedback from the paraprofessional. What is the paraprofessional feeling is going well? How can the TVI support him or her better? I think it's really important to have a good open line of communication with the paraprofessional. You want to be friendly, but maybe not friends, because you're still in a position of supervising in some way, of training. So have that great communication, an open line of communication, but make sure that your paraprofessional feels comfortable telling you how you can support them better. It's important, since most paraprofessionals are working with students, to get feedback from the student. How is the production of Braille turning out? How is the support from the paraprofessional? Are they overbearing or not supporting enough? What does the student feel can be improved? And then get feedback from other teachers and service providers who are on the team. Is the paraprofessional encouraging independence? Is the paraprofessional reinforcing the skills that the other service providers are requesting that paraprofessional to do? And just kind of keep that line of communication open. The paraprofessional is probably third most important person on the team. If you take student is most important, parents and family are second important, paraprofessional is probably third important, because they're going to spend the most time with that student in a day. And just making sure that the team is working as a well-oiled machine, and moving on from there. So that concludes the fourth video in my Partnering with Paras series. There's probably going to be more coming out over time as the need for additional videos arises, but hopefully these 4 videos kind of help you come up with a justification for needing a para, a clear job description for what your paraprofessional will be doing, then a plan for what needs to be trained, how to train it, the packet that you share with your paraprofessional, and then how to teach the Braille or the skills that are necessary, and then progress monitor those things along the way. And I hope you found these useful. Thank you.